Have you ever brushed off a desperate warning, only to wonder later if your life hung in the balance? The Georgia sun was already dipping toward the horizon when Oliver Stone stepped out of his black Range Rover and surveyed the wrought iron gates of his new Buckhead mansion. Sculpted hedges rose like green sentinels on either side of the long driveway, and the late-day light glinted off polished brass door fixtures. He inhaled the scent of fresh pines mingling with the faint tang of expensive concrete sealant. For a moment, the sting of exhaustion from a 12-hour boardroom meeting lifted. This was his domain now. Tech titan, visionary, king of Atlanta's skyline. His fingers brushed the cold brass doorknob, then froze. A sharp voice cut through the quiet. "Don't go in there!" Oliver's breath caught. He spun to see a small figure sprinting barefoot across the smooth limestone. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. Thin, ragged, eyes wide with raw terror. His shirt was torn ragged, his jeans smeared with mud and oil stains. A faded red beanie, once bright but now threadbare, drooped on his head. Oliver stepped back, heart pounding. "What? Who are you?" he asked, voice atypically shaky. The boy skidded to a halt at the bottom of the front steps, chest heaving. He looked as if he'd run for miles. His dark eyes bore into Oliver's in urgent plea. "Please, sir, don't open that door." A cynical chuckle slipped from Oliver's lips. A panhandler kid in Buckhead? Ridiculous. He motioned toward security cameras perched high on the facade. "You're trespassing. I'll have my guards." "Listen," the boy gasped, clutching the hem of his shirt. "I sleep behind your garage, by the old magnolia tree. Last night I saw 2 men break in. They had tools. They were tampering under your kitchen counter. They talked about the air." Oliver's blood ran cold. "The air?" The boy nodded solemnly. "They said, 'Let's see if a billionaire can breathe money.'" A hollow unease gnawed at Oliver's stomach. He'd heard talk of revenge sabotage in the cutthroat world of venture capital, but gas line tampering? It felt absurd, until he reached for his phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. Within minutes, engines roared down the long driveway. Flashing red lights painted the hedges. Firefighters fanned out from the front entrance, sniffing the air. One stocky fire chief, helmet under arm, emerged. He studied Oliver with professional detachment. "Mr. Stone, you're lucky. A slow leak from your main gas valve. Definitely deliberate. Had you gone inside, concentrations would have been lethal. Some folks wouldn't pass out. They'd die." Oliver's jaw clenched. He stared at the red-cheeked boy who'd collapsed against the porch column, knees drawn up, eyes squeezed shut. His small frame trembled with shock. 12 years earlier, Oliver had lost his own little brother, Aaron, to a similar tragedy, a silent gas leak in a rented cabin. He'd never forgiven himself for walking away that night when Aaron begged for help. His memory was a jagged scar. Compelled by something deeper than gratitude, Oliver crouched beside the boy. The boy, he introduced himself as Malik, ran a trembling hand through his dirty hair. "Why warn me?" Oliver asked gently, voice almost soft. Malik stared at his shoes. "I saw a picture of you once, in a paper. You gave money to the Midtown Youth Shelter. I used to live there, before they closed it. I remembered your face. I thought, maybe you'd care." Oliver's chest tightened. He thought back to that half-hearted donation 3 years ago, a quick PR stunt after a scandal. He'd never visited the shelter. He'd never met the kids. Money, he thought cynically, solved everything. Clearly, he'd been wrong. "Are you hungry?" Oliver found himself asking, more to distract both of them than anything. Malik nodded, head low. "Could I come inside?" Oliver hesitated only a second. "Of course." He stood and headed for the door. As they passed through the threshold, Oliver noted the stark contrast. Marble floors, artfully placed orchids, the gleam of crystal chandeliers. And yet the air still carried a faint trace of gas. He motioned to his phone. "Call the company to shut it off permanently." Malik followed him into the soaring foyer, clutching that red beanie like a lifeline. When Oliver led him into the grand kitchen, Malik's eyes widened at the granite countertops and imported cabinetry. They'd cost more than most families made in a year. "Spaghetti," Oliver offered, sliding a container from the fridge. "No mushrooms, I promise." Malik's lips quivered into a shy smile. "Thank you." He ate with urgent hesitation, as if each bite might vanish. Oliver watched from across the island, arms crossed but heart unguarded. While Malik ate, Oliver studied the boy. He spoke in clipped sentences, how his mother had left him at an Atlanta orphanage when she lost her job, promising to return soon. How foster homes felt like locked hotel rooms. How some nights he'd sheltered behind the garbage bins near Oliver's estate. Oliver's mind raced. He'd poured millions into projects, but he had never once sat down with the people his empire affected. He took a breath. "You used to live at Hope House?" Malik nodded, voice small. "Before they shut it down." "Shut it down." Oliver winced. He'd been one of the lead investors in that land deal, promised community revitalization, then moved forward with luxury condos. He'd paraded his generosity in the press, then forgotten the faces of the people displaced. Silence stretched between them. Then Oliver asked almost too quietly, "Do you remember where you slept last night?" Malik pointed toward a side door, behind the hydrangeas, near the old trash cans. Oliver's chest constricted. "You stayed until I came home?" Malik's expression was stubbornly matter-of-fact. "I waited so you wouldn't die inside." Oliver swallowed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Beyond a mere donation, this felt like a moment that demanded more. He extracted a single photograph. Oliver, 3 years younger, standing next to a giant check in front of the shelter, smiling stiffly for the camera. Malik's eyes flicked to it. "You look kind there." Oliver winced. "That check was just PR. I never went back." Malik's reply was simple. "Maybe kindness isn't only in what you give, but in what you remember." Oliver tucked the photo away. "Do you want to stay here tonight? I'll let you use the guest room." Malik's small face brightened. "Really?" "Really." That night, Oliver sat alone in his study, long after Malik had fallen asleep under a pile of borrowed blankets. He stared at his reflection in the dark window pane, haunted by the boy who refused to let him walk into danger alone. Guilt coiled around him, mingling with something like purpose. By dawn, Oliver Stone was already dressed in jeans and a simple polo, far removed from the tailored suits he usually favored. He knocked gently on the guest room door. Malik cracked it open, hair tousled, red beanie nowhere in sight. "Could I show you something?" Oliver held out a small folder. Inside were eviction notices, community emails, and unopened letters from families displaced by his development. Documents he'd signed but never read. Malik peered at the papers with wide eyes. "You did this?" Oliver nodded. "I did. I was promised progress, profit, but I never thought about the people who'd lose everything. I want to change that." Malik traced one letter with his fingertip, a handwritten plea from a single mother begging for more time to find work. "She wanted you to know 'cause you cared," Malik whispered. Oliver closed his eyes. "I want to start caring, really caring." He reached into his pocket and handed Malik a crisp new beanie. "For tonight, and many nights ahead." Malik pulled the bright wool cap onto his head. It fit snugly, like a promise. Together they stepped outside, the first light of morning illuminating long shadows on the driveway. Oliver turned to Malik. "Ready to help me make things right?" Malik squared his shoulders, face determined. "Yeah, let's breathe life back into the air they poison." And in that moment, two strangers from opposite worlds stood together on the cusp of a reckoning. Neither would ever be the same. Chapter 2 begins tomorrow, but tonight they both learn that the strongest walls are not built of marble, but of trust, and that sometimes the smallest voice carries the loudest truth. Oliver awoke before dawn, the soft glow of streetlights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his study. He poured himself a cup of black coffee and sank into the leather chair that once symbolized authority, now felt like a throne of accountability. Across the room, Malik was asleep on the plush guest bed, the red beanie folded neatly on the nightstand. Oliver stared at the boy for a moment, heart thundering with the promise he'd made, to do more than write checks. He glanced at the folder he'd pulled from dusty archives the night before, eviction notices, unread plea letters, community memos. He flipped it open to a handwritten note from a single mother named Rosa, who begged for 2 more weeks to find work before her family was forced out. A pang shot through Oliver's chest. I used to think corporate responsibility was just a line item in the annual report, he admitted inwardly. Now I see how hollow that is. Those reports never capture real lives. By 6:30 a.m., Malik was awake. He'd swapped the guest bed for a corner of Oliver's study couch, determined to watch every step of this transformation. Oliver found him there, knees tucked under his chin, drawing maps of Atlanta neighborhoods in a notebook. "Morning," Oliver said gently. "Ready for our first field visit?" Malik's face brightened. "I've never seen the city before sunrise." They slipped out quietly, leaving the mansion's lights dimmed. Oliver drove them in his Range Rover, but let Malik sit in the front seat. For the first time, the engine sound felt secondary to the hum of two people talking about change. Their destination was the boarded-up building that once housed Hope House. Oliver had negotiated with the city to reacquire it under a new nonprofit he'd hastily named Second Wind Foundation. As they turned onto the block, Malik pointed. "That used to be the playground." The metal swing set stood rusted, the slide peeled. Oliver nodded. "It's more than an eyesore. It's a symbol of broken promises." He stepped out and surveyed the lot. "I've heard CEOs say revitalization will uplift communities," he murmured, voice low. "Bullshit. Uplift implies we're benevolent benefactors. I don't want to uplift you. I want to stand with you." Malik watched him quietly, eyes wide. "That sounds different." Oliver managed a small smile. "It's what I should have done years ago." They met with Marisol, the city's community liaison, and Derek, a volunteer architect who'd agreed to donate his time. Oliver sat at a folding table covered in blueprints, Malik by his side. The meeting was practical, permitting forms, budget allocations, volunteer schedules. But Oliver insisted on starting with community voices. He'd invited 3 former Hope House residents to speak. A lanky teenager named Jasmine described how she'd aged out of the system with nowhere to go. "Every promise felt like another lie," she said, voice steady. Malik's pencil hovered over his notebook. "I thought grown-ups helped," he whispered, not for the room but to Oliver. Oliver's chest tightened. "They should," he whispered back. "They absolutely should." Next came Mr. Thompson, a retired teacher, who recalled watching neighborhood kids wander the streets because there was nothing else to do. "That playground was our refuge," he said, voice shaking. "When it closed, hope closed with it." Oliver took notes furiously. Inside, he felt both shame and resolve. "How could I have been so blind?" he thought. "I focused on profit margins, stock prices, never on human margins." Finally, Rosa, the mother from the eviction letter, spoke through tears about stuffing her children into a single room, praying someone would notice their absence. As she spoke, Malik reached for Oliver's hand. That simple gesture, a lifeline between them, cut sharper than any sales pitch. After the meeting, Oliver walked Rosa to her car. "Rosa," he said softly, "I want to offer your family priority in the first 5 units we renovate." She looked at him, stunned. "You're serious?" Oliver nodded. "Serious." Back at the Range Rover, Malik sat quietly in the back seat. Oliver opened the rear door. "What do you think so far?" Malik tapped his notebook, where he'd sketched a new playground design. "I think you actually mean it. Most grown-ups just talk." That honesty made Oliver's eyes sting. "I want us to build something that lasts, not just concrete and wood, but trust." They drove to a small cafe in South Atlanta, where Oliver had invited Pastor Nguyen, whose storefront church had hosted pop-up food drives. Over black coffee and scrambled eggs, the pastor spoke of dignity, how handing out meals felt like charity, but sharing a meal built relationships. Oliver scribbled, "Partnership, dignity, shared space." He felt the tangle of his old self, ego, ambition, untangle. "Real leadership requires humility," he noted in the margin. "I never learned that in business school." Later that afternoon, Oliver returned to the mansion to brief his executive team via video conference. As the faces of skeptical board members flickered on the screen, he paused the agenda. "Forget the quarterly targets for a moment. We're losing our humanity. We have to change our focus from shareholder value to stakeholder dignity." Silence filled the line. Then his COO, surprised but intrigued, asked how the foundation's pilot would be funded. Oliver outlined the budget shift. phasing out one luxury project to free up $10 million. When he hit share, he saw Riley, his COO, nod slowly. "I didn't realize you felt this strongly," she said softly. Oliver leaned back. "Neither did I until last week." That evening, Malik returned to the study chair, his makeshift desk, surrounded by crumpled sketches and sticky notes. Oliver sat beside him. "You've been quiet. What's on your mind?" Malik pointed to a drawing of a community garden. "I think after the playground, people need a place to grow food." Oliver smiled, genuinely impressed. "I love that. We'll include raised beds and compost bins." Malik's face lit up. "And benches so old people can sit." They planned late into the night. Playground, community garden, a small cafe incubator for local entrepreneurs, and a training center for job skills. At each idea, Oliver interjected with his personal reflections. "I used to think success meant building upwards, skyscrapers that kiss the sky. Now success means building outwards, roots that hold people up." As midnight approached, Oliver closed his notebook. He stood and stretched stiffly. "I have to make one more call." He dialed the trustee board for Hope House's old endowment. Long redirected. "I'm reallocating the entire remaining balance to Second Wind, effective immediately." Malik watched him, eyes heavy. "You're giving away millions." Oliver paused. "I'm reclaiming what I never used right." He reached out and ruffled Malik's hair. "Thank you for saving my life." Malik shrugged, eyes earnest. "You saved mine too. Seeing you actually listen." Oliver paused, surprised by the boy's insight. "Maybe we save each other," he said. Malik grinned, then yawned. "Promise we'll work together tomorrow?" "Promise," Oliver replied and tucked him in for the night. As he lay in bed, Oliver reflected on the day's lessons. Real change isn't about grand gestures, he thought. It's about showing up, listening, embedding your own conviction into every action. He realized that the child who warned him not only spared his life, he had redirected his entire existence. Tomorrow they would break ground on the playground, and the day after open the garden. In the weeks to come, they would renovate Hope House, hire local staff, and launch the cafe incubator. Every step forward carried both the weight of past failures and the light of new hope. Oliver closed his eyes determined. He would carry these personal truths into every board meeting, every project plan, and every conversation. Because leadership without empathy is just hollow power, and he intended to be different. And somewhere in the early hours, Malik dreamed of swings painted bright red, sunflowers reaching toward the sky, and a world where people finally stop pretending they don't see one another. That world was about to begin. Dawn light filtered through the half-finished playground fence as Oliver and Malik arrived on the site. The air hummed with anticipation, the scent of fresh lumber, turned earth, and morning blossoms from a neighbor's yard. Volunteers, families from nearby blocks, former Hope House residents, and Oliver's own staff in rolled-up sleeves were unpacking swings, lining up sandbox buckets, and painting murals on plywood panels. For the first time since Oliver's empire had claimed this land, the space felt alive. Malik hopped out of the Range Rover, red beanie snug on his head, and joined painter Ramon, an ex-resident who'd once slept in a storm drain, to brush vibrant dragonflies across a fence panel. Oliver watched them, two people once overlooked, now side by side, transforming a blank canvas into a sanctuary. This is what true progress looks like, Oliver thought, chest swelling with pride and humility. By mid-morning, the sound of hammers and laughter echoed across the lot. Elderly couples from the neighborhood carefully planted tomato seedlings in the future community garden beds. High school students guided toddlers up a gentle slide. Malik ran to Oliver, pointing at a newly poured cement pad, soon to be the foundation for the cafe incubator. "They're building it just like we drew," he said, voice brimming with wonder. Oliver knelt beside him. "Do you see all these people? They're not here because I paid them. They're here because they believe in the same thing we do, that a community is only as strong as its most vulnerable members." He placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, feeling the warmth of shared purpose. Around lunchtime, Oliver gathered everyone under a temporary shade tent. He cleared his throat, voice steady but rich with emotion. "When I first walked onto this land, I saw only profit and promises, he began, eyes scanning the crowd. But I was wrong. A home isn't just walls and windows. It's hope, safety, and connection. And no one should have to beg for those basics. He paused, looking directly at Malik, now 20 feet away, spraying bright blue on the cafe's outer wall. This boy taught me that lesson. He saved my life when he risked his own to warn me. Today, we're not just building playgrounds or gardens. We're rebuilding trust. The crowd burst into applause, but Oliver lifted a hand for quiet. I'm not asking for your thanks. I'm asking for your partnership. In the weeks ahead, this site will host job training classes, cooking workshops, tutoring sessions, and more. I want you, every single one of you, to have a say in shaping these programs. This belongs to you. Tears glinted on more than one cheek. Late afternoon brought a steady drizzle, light, soft, as if the sky itself approved. Volunteers scattered to cover paint and props, but Malik stayed by the garden beds, coaxing rain-weary seedlings upright. Oliver grabbed an umbrella and joined him. You all right? He asked. Malik looked up, raindrops beating on his eyelashes. Yeah, look at this place. It used to be empty. Now, so much life. He brushed a thumb across a leaf. Makes me wonder why more people don't speak up when they see something wrong. Oliver smiled through the umbrella's shadow. Because most people feel like their voice won't matter. But your warning changed everything. You reminded me that silence kills, and speaking out saves. As the rain tapered off, the playground swings squeaked under their own momentum. Children ran toward them, shrieking with delight. Malik stepped back and watched, the red beanie now streaked with paint and raindrops. Oliver caught his gaze and winked. Malik laughed, a pure, unguarded sound that made Oliver's throat tighten. By sunset, the playground stood nearly complete. Fresh mulch under swings, a slide painted sunrise orange, the community garden's neat rows glistening. Oliver and Malik walked its perimeter, side by side, the soft earth giving under their feet. Remember the night you warned me? Oliver asked, voice low. Malik nodded, eyes solemn. I almost walked in without knowing what you risked just to stop me. Oliver paused, inhaling the sweet, damp air. I want you to know something. I will spend the rest of my life making sure this place never goes dark again. No child goes hungry or homeless here. No fear will ever be ignored. Malik's lips trembled. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper, the news clipping of Oliver's original donation, 3 years ago, with the headline splashed across the front page. I kept this, Malik said. I thought maybe one day you'd see it. He handed it to Oliver. Oliver took it, fingers brushing the boy's. I see it now, he said gently, and I see you. He folded the clipping and tucked it into his jacket. Then he turned to the glowing piece of land before them. Let this be our legacy, he said, voice firm. Not luxury towers, but homes that breathe life back into communities. In the twilight, lanterns flickered on around the garden beds. Volunteers gathered for a simple potluck feast. Cakes from the cafe incubator, fresh veggies from Malik's garden, coffee from local roasters. As people shared meals and stories, Oliver and Malik sat at a picnic table, elbows almost touching. I'm proud of you, Oliver said quietly. Malik grinned, cheeks flushed from the day's work. I'm proud of you too. At that moment, a reporter from the local news channel approached, and Malik braced himself. But Oliver raised a hand, gently steering her to the edge of the gathering. This story isn't about heroes, he said to the cameraman. It's about community. Show their faces, not mine. The camera panned over laughing children, elderly neighbors swapping recipes, former Hope House residents hugging one another. Oliver turned back to Malik, who watched the footage on a phone screen. See that? Oliver whispered. That's real change. Malik's eyes shone. Feels like home. As the night sky unfurled its blanket of stars, Oliver stood at the center of the playground, Malik by his side. Above them, a new sign shone in soft LED light. Second Wind Foundation, where every breath is a second chance. Oliver took a deep breath of the cool, clean air, the very air the saboteurs had tried to poison. Now it carried laughter, hope, and renewal. He reached out, placing a hand on Malik's shoulder. "Tonight," he said, voice strong, "we reclaimed more than land. We reclaimed our humanity." Malik looked up, tears glistening. "And tomorrow?" Oliver smiled, gazing across the joyful scene. "Tomorrow we keep speaking up. We keep building. We keep saving each other." They stood together under the sign, two souls linked by courage and compassion. The camera pulled back to capture the scene. A billionaire and a homeless boy, not divided by status, but united by purpose. And as the lanterns glowed, as children's laughter carried into the night, the viewer is left with a simple, powerful truth. When one brave voice breaks the silence, it can spark a movement that heals a community and even the world. If that doesn't make you believe in the power of speaking out, in the promise of second chances, I don't know what will.